In this video, we will describe how to configure the Azure AI Foundry agent service using Bing Search. Let's now zoom out and consult our little plan of action. By this point, we've finished creating our Foundry project and our model deployment, and we've also created an agent. That takes us then to step 3 in our plan. We now have to configure the grounding tool. Here we are back in the Azure portal. On the top left, you see that we are looking at our Looney LLM RG resource group. We click on that plus create button and go to the Azure Marketplace where we search for grounding with Bing Search. Notice right next to it, there is another hit for grounding with Bing Custom Search. In any case, we click on the little create button under grounding with Bing Search, and that takes us into the dialog to provision that resource. The most interesting thing here is the pricing tier. You see, their grounding with Bing Search is currently priced at $35 for 1K transactions. Let's scroll down because we'll have to accept the terms from the dropdown just above the Review plus Create button, and then after doing that, we click on that button. That takes us into the next step, where we then hit Create. Our Bing Grounding Search resource has now come into existence. We get the message telling us that our deployment is complete. At this point, we can switch back to the Azure AI Foundry portal. We still happen to have that Create a new grounding with Bing Search connection dialog there. And this has magically picked up our newly provisioned Bing Search resource in the list of resources down below. All we have to do is click on that little Add Connection button at the top right of this dialog. It's towards the center right of the screen. A moment later, there's a green checkbox saying Connected in the top right. We still have to click Connect down below. That blue button will validate our connection and close this dialog. That, in turn, takes us back out into the details of our Agent 545. That sounds like something out of a Bond film, and we see over on the right that under Knowledge, we now have our Agent Grounding resource. This reflects there successfully. We now are getting to the interesting bits here. The next step is to actually chat with this agent and get a news summary. So here we are back in the Agents section. And now we click on that Try and Playground button. You see that towards the top right of the screen in the setup card. Now, please take a look at the breadcrumbs on the top left. There, you see first off that we've reached the agent's playgrounds that's under all playgrounds, and in turn, it's listed next to our project name, Looney-agent-project. And of course, all of this is still in the Azure AI Foundry. Now, please look at the center of the screen. There, you see that we've asked the question, can you give me a summary of the current business news stories? And the reply makes it clear that the internet has indeed been consulted. Dow futures are showing a slight dip as Wall Street evaluates potential consequences, and so on. Scrolling a little further down, you can see there that the date is the current date, which is the 2nd of June 2025. Also, notice that our current thread has an ID that's visible just above the chat pane, thread_006K, followed by more auto-generated characters. Now, for the last step, which is to use an Agent SDK in order to run Python code. The easiest way to do this is to switch back to the agent's playground, and there you see over up top that we have a View Code button. Let's click on that in order to see how we can connect from Python. Here's the code as displayed in this View Code button. This is important code, so let's paste it somewhere else and examine it in more detail. First, we've run a pip install of Azure AI Gelling, and then of Azure Identity. Azure AI Gelling Projects is the core SDK to programmatically interact with Azure AI Foundry. This includes managing agents, projects, tools, models, and execution flows. This version that you see here, which is 1.0.0b10, is currently in public preview. That's indicated by the B10 for beta. Azure Identity provides standard Azure authentication classes such as the default Azure credential. Then we have the imports, including AIProjectClient, default Azure credential, and list sort order. AIProjectClient is the main SDK entry point from the Azure AI Projects Client library. This allows us to connect to a specific Azure AI Foundry project list or invoke agents and work with models and evaluations. List sort order is used while querying agents, threads, or executions. As the name would suggest, it allows us to control the sorting. We can make use of list sort order.ascending or descending. Next, we instantiate a project client. This is of type AIProjectClient. We pass in the default Azure credential. The endpoint, this is the endpoint of our AI Foundry service name, and we also have to include our project name way over on the right. Next, we use this client in order to send a message to an Azure AI agent within a specific thread. First, we call project.agents.get_agent, and we have to pass in an identifier. This is the agent ID that we have passed in. Note how it starts with ast__ust. This is not mandatory for sending messages, but it is useful if you'd like to inspect the agent's config or metadata. Then we get a thread again. This is via project.agents.threads.get, and now we've got to paste in a thread ID. This fetches an existing conversation thread between a user and an agent. We need to know this thread ID in advance. We can create it from the agent's playground. Then you see that we actually create a message that's done by invoking project.agents.messages.create. We pass in the thread_ID, the role, which is user, and then the actual content. That's our message. Can you give me a quick summary of the latest headlines in US newspapers? This now allows us to run the thread on an agent and parse the message response. Stance API, which we had previously used while working with the OpenAI resource. This line creates and returns a run. This is the task execution context, and the agent service is going to now start processing the thread using the selected agent. We then call project.agents.messages.list, passing in thread.id and the order we've specified, list sort order.ascending. At this point, the variable messages contains all of the messages in the thread. This includes both user and assistant messages. Then we are going to iterate over those messages, and we are going to print out the latest text message. We do that via that index of -1, which we pass into message.text-messages in the last line of code on screen now. We also print out the message.roll. That then gets us to the end of this exploration of the Azure AI Foundry agent service. This is a technology which promises to achieve great things in the days to come, and it's great that we are learning it this early, this soon after it was released. In this video, we will summarize the key concepts covered in this course. We began this course by understanding how agents combine an LLM, instructions, and tools, where the tools are invoked by the LLM in order to carry out actions. We contextualized agents as the logical next step in the evolution of AI apps, coming after chatbots, LLMs, and assistants. Next, we covered the features and capabilities of the Azure AI Foundry agent service. We enumerated the currently available tools as well as the difference between basic and standard projects. Finally, we identified how the Azure Agent Service supported multi-agent workflows, and then how to pick between the use of the Connected Agents feature within the Azure AI Foundry and Semantic Kernel, and AutoGen for more complex multi-agent workflows. We now have a thorough understanding of this newly added service in the context of the AI 102 curriculum, and we are ready to move on to the Plan and Manage an Azure AI Solutions skill area. This is what we will do in the next course, Securing and Monitoring Azure AI Services, coming up ahead.